Hi there. Welcome to HoopsHabit.com's Southeastern Division Preview. If you haven't checked out our other division previews, head on over to HoopsHabit.com or check out our YouTube channel. Let's get started. If you want to be positive about the Charlotte Bobcats, there's one thing you can say. It can't get any worse. Last year they won 7 games and set an NBA record for the worst winning percentage in the history of the game. This year they're going to get a little bit better, but not that much. The future is still a couple of years away for them. This year I've got them finishing 18-64. Part of the reason is they've made a couple of changes that are going to help them down the line, but this year they're still going to be terrible. They added Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who's going to be a hustle guy, effort guy. He's not great at any one thing, but he does everything and he plays hard. He is going to have the rest of his team on his back playing the same way that he does. Instead of quitting like they did last year, they're going to compete every game regardless of the score. Last year they scored just 87 points per game and gave up over 100. It's hard to give full effort when you're getting crushed every single night. This year, they're not going to get crushed every single night, maybe every other night. It's still going to be ugly, but they're trending in the right direction. Give them a break. They're not that good. The Dwight Howard era is over in Orlando, and unfortunately for now, their winning era is over as well. Last year they finished 37-29, which was good for third place in the Southeast Division. They're not going to come anywhere close to that this year. I've got them finishing 20-62, fourth in the division. Without Dwight Howard, man in the paint, they're not going to have room for their shooters. You've got to understand that having a dominant player in the middle, both on the offensive and the defensive end, spreads things out. You force shooters to go out on defense, and when you're on offense, those guys collapse on him. Without anybody collapsing in the paint, guys like Hedo Turkoglu, Jameer Nelson, they're not going to have the open shots that they would have with Dwight Howard there. What they do have is they've added a couple of good young pieces like Aaron Aflalo, Al Harrington, who isn't young anymore, but he's still a solid NBA player. Unfortunately, you've still got Glenn Davis, Turkoglu, who I already mentioned, these gargantuan contracts that I still can't believe Orlando gave them in the first place. But it's going to be a couple of years. They've got some draft picks, none in the lottery, which I cannot fathom how. Rob Hennigan said okay to that Dwight Howard deal, but that's another story for another day. Last year, the Magic were a good defensive team. This year, they're not going to be. It's going to be harder for them to score and harder for them to defend. It's going to be a tough year, and if the Charlotte Bobcats weren't in the league, I might call the Orlando Magic the worst team in basketball. And now for one of my surprise teams, the Washington Wizards. Last year they were pretty bad at 20-46, but they did win the last 6 games of the year after they acquired Nene late in the year. Their defense was horrible as a whole last year. They averaged giving up 98.4 points per game. But in the offseason, they went out and got Trevor Ariza to play small forward and Emeka Okafor to slide next to Nene at power forward. This is going to really improve their squad, both defensively and with leadership. You've got John Wall in the backcourt, who is a tremendous player, a guy that I'm picking to probably break out this year, maybe win the most improved player. He had a couple of good years so far, very consistent. He didn't have the sophomore slump that a lot of rookies end up having. But he turns the ball over too much, and he doesn't shoot a very high percentage. Both of those things he improved from his rookie to his sophomore campaign, and I'm saying he's going to take it up another notch. He's going to become a superstar because he's going to take this Washington team to the playoffs. I've got them third in the Southeast Division at 43-39. They're going to slide into the playoffs, and John Wall is going to officially be on the map. Bradley Beal comes in as their first round pick, and he's going to be shooting all day and all night. With Wall driving it to the paint and Beal spotting up from the outside, look for the Washington Wizards to surprise a lot of people. By their standards, the Atlanta Hawks had a pretty standard season. They finished second in the Southeast Division with a 40-26 record. Again, they made it to the playoffs, and again, they didn't do a whole lot in the playoffs. But the core of Joe Johnson, Josh Smith, and Al Horford is no more. Danny Ferry actually traded Joe Johnson's contract away. Now, you can count me as a guy who thought that would never, ever happen. Joe Johnson is so overpaid, and as somebody who got his contract before the new CBA was signed, I would have thought it was impossible to move him. But he did it. Kudos to Ferry. They've also brought in a couple of players to help ease the loss, like Lou Williams. He's a guy who's not going to do a whole lot else but score, but he does that pretty well. He's not going to shoot a high percentage, but you need guys off the bench as the sixth man to be electric and come in and energize the crowd and the team. Right now, the core of Jeff Teague, Josh Smith, and Al Horford are good enough to get them back into the playoffs. I don't see them going much further. The loss of Johnson hurts them in that way. They don't have a guy who they can trust at the end of games to take care of business. Joe Johnson was used to taking the big shot. Who's going to take it for him now? It's not going to be Devin Harris. It's not going to be Kyle Korver. They just don't have anybody. Ideally, they get someone to step up and start taking those clutch shots. But when I look through the roster, I don't see too many guys who look qualified to do it. They are going to have a lot of cap room come the summer of 2013. That's when they should use it to pick up a clutch scorer, a guy to replace Joe Johnson, probably at half of the cost, and more production. Things are looking up for the Hawks. I've got them going 44-38, good for second place in the Southeast Division this year. For the Miami Heat, the rich just get richer. Last year they finished 46-20, which was good for first place in the Southeast Division. This year, I see more of the same. They didn't lose a player of consequence this year, and they added the most prolific three-point shooter in the history of the NBA in Ray Allen. When he was with the Boston Celtics, all he did was spread the floor, hit big shots, and help them win a championship. Now that he's in Miami, he, along with Rashard Lewis, are going to do the same thing. He's going to camp out on the three-point line, which is going to spread the floor for guys like LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. Now, why is this important? Because James and Wade usually have an advantage over their defenders. James is bigger, stronger, and faster than anybody you're going to put in front of him. The only way to beat him is to try to double-team him. Well, now, if you double-team him, they've got shooters all over the court, Shane Battier and Mike Miller included, that are going to rain down on them. I don't know how teams are going to beat the Miami Heat if they can stay healthy and get to the playoffs. LeBron James is dead in the middle of his prime, coming off of the best year a player could even imagine, winning the regular season MVP, the finals MVP, a finals ring, and an Olympic gold medal. The only thing better than that would be back-to-back championships. That's exactly what I see happening for the Miami Heat. They're going to finish 62-20, finish first in the Southeast Division, and run the table and win their second consecutive NBA championship.